So we've heard from our speakers. So to all of you virtually attending, if you have questions for any of them on any topic that we've discussed here tonight, please send it via email. I will be monitoring my email. So it's info@ncca.com.au. And obviously for you here, perhaps just raise your hand. But I am not going to moderate the questions because we need an expert, I think. So I would like to introduce you to Jonathan Jeffries. Jonathan is one of Australia's leading startup advisors. He's co-founder and partner at Think and Grow and chairperson at Crosscoders International. He is passionate about continuously evolving processes that help solve business issues through connectivity, content, and partnerships. Over the last 15 years, he has assisted some of the world's most impactful businesses, including Stripe, Square, Etsy, Dropbox, and Cardless. So I think, Jonathan, you are perfect at perhaps talking with the audience. Actually, Trevor, I'd like to invite you too to perhaps sit so we can create a discussion. And I'm handing over to you. So thank you very much.
Can everyone hear me? Overseas as well. So thanks for the introduction and kind words. Hopefully I don't have another coughing fit from I've just absorbed, which might have been something at lunch, but who knows. But like anything, we've heard a lot from the fantastic people that support the Netherlands in terms of supporting the chambers both overseas and locally here, and like anything, like the biggest challenge in when you expand globally tends to come around to like three key aspects. And for us, in all the work we've done over the last 15 years, it comes down to how do you create revenue, how do you build a team, and how do you get investment. And the investment doesn't always mean financially in a local region. It means the investment in the community, the support from the government and the agencies, and everybody in and around supporting you into that region. And so for me, like obviously me and Trevor can talk our yarn off in and around expanding globally into the EU, into any other region. But I think for this type of conversation, we've heard a lot around so many success stories and businesses we work with. It's really important that we absorb, the audience's views, the questions that they have, be it virtually or here, to try and actually help create a better dialogue. So without putting too many people under too much pressure, I'd love to see some questions coming in from overseas, and obviously love to see some questions coming in from here now so we can start that dialogue. But if Helena doesn't have quite the question right on the tip of the tongue, then I can obviously speak to a good friend Trevor here and actually start to put him under the pump a little bit in and around these challenges. Paul, go ahead. Go.
Thanks very much. I guess my question is, we've all been very positive tonight, but if I could be a bit of a pessimist, what are some of the things you see with companies who aren't ready?
Yeah.
And who do want to go abroad, and what are the kind of things that you tell them?
Sure. Do you want to start? Or you want me to start?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of startups trying to go abroad too early, right? And I think there's a saying, you need to think globally or die locally in a lot of cases, right? Yeah. So your startup has to be thought through to be able to go global. But you do need to be able to get the credibility in your home market before you actually go. That if you haven't really got that elusive product market fit, that you really know why your customers are buying in your market, then it's really difficult to go into another market where consumer or B2B sales is quite different, and try to guess and try to evolve both of those models at the same time. So too early until you've established why your customers here are buying, I think, is critical.
Yeah, so let's pretend that those companies have got product market fit, right? And let's think about the challenges going globally just for a sec, right? So for me, like the biggest challenges in the naivety that we see in market generally, and that's US companies, UK companies, Asia Pac companies, EU companies coming here, but also Aussie and Kiwis company going there, right? So that's like to Trevor's point, product market fit, and then understanding the local market credentials and how that product market fit makes sense, doing the research, and importantly, the user research. So one of the biggest gaps, which is random, if you read every startup book on the planet, it'll pretty much tell you to interview customers and work out what product market fit looks like. Do you know what Aussie companies mainly do? Ignore that, go for a piss up, and go and have a great little time in a city, and ignore every single aspect of every single book that they preach to their team. So if we're going to land properly and we're going to do it right, let's interview the customers. And funnily enough, if we get that right and we understand what a customer needs, we're able to present the right protocol, the right product market fit in, and then we're actually able to land and expand. And there's some amazing people in the room, and I'll call out Stuart at the back here, who works for Global Victoria, who I know does an amazing job. Paul, I've just got to know you, but for me, listening to what the government bodies can do in supporting you in getting into that market, and then partnering with people like Helene to actually get that referenceable point into a new market. So we're talking about the Netherlands, and actually using those governments to get into the bodies, get into the government, get into the corporates, get into the enterprise markets. But if you don't do your user research testing, you're pointing them in a blind direction, and the blind's leading the blind. So they're saying, hey, I need to get in front of a bank. And you're like, yeah, I just need to be in front of a bank. If you tell them you need to be in front of the chief risk officer of the bank, then it makes them associate the need and can support them with the need. But a lot of startups just assume their product is understood by government departments that clearly have a lot on their plate across multiple disciplines, multiple verticals, multiple startup types, which doesn't give them that niche vertical expertise that is just assumed by many companies. And so as startups, we lean a lot on the government and the expectation, but the reality is we need to do a lot more ourselves. And the biggest gap for me is the research that's required to land overseas, and then what comes with that in terms of the cost of doing it well. In the market analysis we did a few years ago, which is pre-COVID, so some things have changed, some things really haven't. Really, if you look at the EU market, to do it well, and it's not to scare everyone off doing it, it's about 1.5 million euros over the first 18 to 24 months, post-research, to land well into a product market fit market and build that function and team that you need. So that's salaries, that's flights, that's the back and forth for training and development, that's the marketing, office costs, everything you need to do it well. And we focus on doing it well, not doing it half-assed. And a lot of people do it half-assed, which is why they fail.
Anybody else here? Yeah, Rob.
Evening, Rob van Veenendaal, NCCA. I was just wondering if you could define contain it to three critical success factors for a fintech startup. I have another question too while I'm at it. We've seen a lot of names of successful companies come by, but there's a large percentage of failures as well. With the recent increase of the last couple of years of companies such as yourself, facilitators, trainers, mentors, increased access to risk capital, how has that balance between failure and success increased?
Oh, yeah. You want me to go? Yeah.
I'll try the first one, part of the question, which was, what are the critical success factors? Yeah. So we've all been doing finance for many, many years, yeah, and finance generally works, yeah. So for a fintech to be successful, they've got to really kind of break a value chain and actually reduce costs or reduce friction along the way, yep. In some way to be able to push through, right? And well, like, so use that as an example, right? Squeezing the FX margins, right? Yeah. Which affects a lot of businesses, right? So not a lot of high-tech solution there, but just really a business model that really disrupts the business model of the incumbents, because they hold the market very, very strongly, yeah? So that's probably the number one thing. The thing that comes behind that is really the team that's doing it. Financial services is quite complex, yeah? There's a lot of rules, there's a lot of regulations, right? There's a lot of things you need to integrate in. And it's very, very hard for a newbie to come into the market and actually understand the nuances to be able to launch a successful fintech. Yeah. And then I suppose the last thing is, are they able to get the funding they need? So if we're talking about, $1.5 million just to even launch in Europe and things like that, fintech's oftentimes heavy tech. They need a large investment to really get up and running and get going. So I'd say that they were the three things that I would think that are needed for success. Yeah.
I'll try and string through. So we'll do a quick snap on the three. So when you're trying to expand globally, for me, it's alignment at HQ. And alignment at HQ is the communication and the agreement of the team around the spend of the investment and the penetration into that market. It's then investment and the time. So then it comes down to the people. So are you going to land with a human there, or are you going to take someone from head office out there? So you have to do the due diligence as a group. You have to go and land and expand your footprint and understanding, which is product market fit, user research testing, and really understanding. And the Global Vic as a group runs a myriad of different missions into markets to try and get that fit. And I'm sure the Netherlands, in its new format here, will obviously help support that into this market. If you get that right and you find that understanding, in fintech, the biggest challenge is fintech is now like every single seat in this room today, which is roughly 30 or 40 years. Fintech is so broad, and so each fintech discipline requires different regulation, different licensing, different parts that don't necessarily exist in other tech businesses, and making sure your product market fit is right for the Netherlands and the EU, therefore, is critical to your expansion. And so unless that's right, you're going to fail straight up. That's just not happening. So you have to get that bit right. So let's just imagine that is right. To Trevor's point, it's then people that are right and hyper-connected. So you've got two versions of how you can solve that. You can either hire straight in if you've got the capital, which is hiring someone that doesn't necessarily look any different to the people in the room here today. So I've got a little grey shrub either side of my hair. Trev's looking a little less stressed than I am over life. He hasn't got as many grey shrubs. But you need that market connectivity. You've got two ways of doing that. You either hire an experienced person that understands your discipline and your function within fintech so well they know everyone in the market across the Netherlands. And when you're launching into EU, you kind of need the Netherlands and more. That's the way the market works, right? But your other option is to find advisors early, and advisors that have more grey hair than me. So, I'll have a look at a few people, see if anyone's there. You're all looking all right. But in theory, having established partners either as a full-time partnership or as advisors that can support you on your entry really stands you in good stead, because like Melbourne, like Amsterdam and the surrounding areas of the Netherlands, it's a community thing. And if you're trusted by one, you're trusted by more than one. And if you can find that trusted partner that is a discipline expert or a functional expert that can actually believe in what you're doing and use that trust to then give you the gateway to knowledge in that market. In Australia, it's around wine lunches, which I had a great one today, which worked really well for me. But I'm not sure what it is in the Netherlands because I'm not from there. And I have been there as a teenager, and it was very different to probably what it is as a businessman in how you network, but perhaps it isn't. Ultimately, that finite view of trying to get in at that layer and trying to understand that layer is what government agencies are great at, but founders need to do that a little bit more to do that themselves. And then finally, HQ alignment, product market fit around finding that connection and human and making that right hire is the continual investment that it takes, because it is not an overnight success. No business has ever been an overnight success. And the businesses that we launched here in FinTech, like the Stripes and the Squares that were kindly introduced as companies we've supported in some way, shape or form, before we actually announced they launched, or they announced they launched as opposed to us, they were in market 18 months working hard with an MD already there and a community and a team to build up to launch. And so it's not always revenue first. It's about building a sustainable, longer-term partnership with an ecosystem and a community, be it that Amsterdam, be it the Netherlands, be it the whole EU. And then when you're ready to launch, you will be much more successful as a business if you take the longer play, not just the in and out.
I think I might. Yeah. Okay. We'll one more question from Kevin, because we are shrinking our time to have the opportunity to have a glass of wine, because by 7:30 we really have to be out of here. But obviously for us here in the room, we can have a drink and still chat with one another. But obviously maybe I will say our goodbyes to our virtual audience, and thank you for being here. And I also want to say that everybody will get emailed early next week, I believe, the PowerPoint and all contact details of the speakers. So if you do want further information, then you can get that. So thank you so much for you coming in today here live, Trevor and Jonathan. So perhaps do ask the question, and then the people that are virtually here, please stay. But the rest of us, we're also going to have a drink soon. So thank you so much. And thank you, Paul from Global Vic and International Chamber House for hosting us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty much interested in learning. There are so many companies reaching out to both Trevor and Think and Grow. They all have great ideas, and they say, oh, I need an investment of X because I want to build X of Y. But they need people.
Yep.
They need experienced people. They need talented people. How do you advise them where they get their people from? Because everyone knows that, let's say over a course of 6 to 24 months' time, we all want to build something, but it's not given that that person that starts building A is still there in 24 months' time from now. So do you take that on as a risk as well? Because if I want to expand to the Netherlands, for example, and I really want to build something big, I might need those experienced people, which means the cost is much higher than if I do it locally. What's your experience on that front?
Look, I think particularly with building, anything that's deep tech, having a technical co-founder on the team along with the business persons, it's absolutely fundamental. We see a number of people who have ideas and then try to outsource all their development, and it gets very expensive very quickly. Yep. Whereas if you can bring some tech founders around you, then they'll work all night, number one, but they'll really care and know the product, right? Yep. There are plenty of great tech people who want to be involved in great startups. Yep. So then it's about putting the time in to network where those people are, and there's a good startup ecosystem here, and Startup Vic and others run a lot of good events, and there's a lot of good events around. And anyone who's wanting to start, I don't think it's going to investors with an idea and then I'm going to hire a bunch of people. You get away with that if you've had a number of successful exits before, but otherwise you'll just burn a lot of time. You actually need to get a couple of people who are willing to take the risk with you.
Yeah. I was talking to some of the chaps here before. Like, one of the interesting dynamics in Australia, if we're talking about Australian businesses, scaling and then growing globally here, is that, that might have changed slightly post-COVID, but if you look at San Francisco, Tel Aviv, like the way they think about it and the way they build startups is mainly based on engineering or product principles at the start. In Australia, we're in a slightly different dynamic where about 50% of business is about based on industry dynamic. So understanding deeply an industry and then trying to build something off that through their network, and then trying to sub-build the product that suits that. So outsourcing MVP to get to a point where maybe they get into one of Trevor's programs, and then they're frantically trying to find a co-founder that has that technology or product bias. One of the biggest mistakes that's made is trying to hire a mate who can do it, who can't do it. That's definitely a key factor we see globally, not just here. We've just done a few pieces of work in the UK in and around trying to find that co-founding team where to get to the next level of investment, a lot of VCs will not really invest in you unless you've got like a co-founding technologist or product leader, and like whatever title you want to give them, let's just say it's CTO or CPO, they're just going to go, good one.
Yep.
You're a product and technology company without a product and technology co-founder, you're just sort of not there. And so on the rare occasion that someone falls in love with you without that, then you'll get invested. But in a tight market like today, you kind of a 1 in 99, you know, to get that without that, you know, co-founder product tech viewpoint. From a more generic people viewpoint in scaling, the biggest challenge that, you know, we find in actually helping businesses establish a framework around people is clarity of role. So in a traditional format, there's a resume and there's a job description. If you go on, you know, the Australian job boards around Seek or LinkedIn, you'll see 27 different bullet points that someone's responsible for or accountable for. In our view of the world, especially in fast growth tech, that just can't be achievable. It's impossible that any one person is at any one time great at 27 bullet points. Yeah, no, I agree. Fucking impossible. Like, so if we focus down on core principles of what someone's core scar tissue is in terms of experience, and then we focus on what the scar tissue of success factors we need in that role at that time, the difference in our world versus a corporate world is that is not infinite. That is 12 months, that is 18 months, that is 36 months, and then you're done. Not every person in startup world is right. And if we go to the Valley, there are experts that are good from 1 mil to 5 mil, 5 mil to 10 mil, 10 mil to 30 mil, 30 mil to 50 mil. And you look at really great VCs like Sequoia and the likes, they have like this whole function around Sequoia Benefits or A16 where you can go in and you basically, they refer you to these people that are great at building businesses from 10 to 30 mil in their specific function and discipline within that function. So just product marketing or just digital marketing in any way, shape or form. Yes, they earn equity and take their slice for their bit, but the maturing of the ecosystem here hasn't got to that point where people are comfortable with saying, you're so much value for me to get from A to B that I'm going to give you some equity, and that is what's going to reduce my cost right now, which is niche expertise in the discipline and function you need today, sprinting at it and getting you to that next level and then saying goodbye. People, for some reason in this ecosystem, find it very hard to say goodbye. Goodbye.
Good ending. Thank you.